Why does League of Legends feel good to play? If your answer is it doesn't, League sucks, I won't say you're wrong. But over the last 11 years, League has been the only game that I have come back to every year without fail. And I struggle with games that don't feel good. Even the controls of Diablo 2 are janky enough to turn me away from the game. And every time I die playing Dark Souls, I have to use every ounce of my willpower to keep going. So something about League of Legends must feel good to keep me hooked. And I know many feel the same way. Recently, I was in the r/League of Legends Discord, looking for a group to game with, because most of my friends are smart enough to not play League. In this Discord, I met a player who told me League is literally the only game they play, that it's the only game that catches their attention. So this got me thinking, what does League have for some people that other games don't? What makes it stand out from other MOBAs that follow the same formula? What does it have that keeps me hooked? If I asked you how some game feels to play, what would be the first thing that comes to your mind? For me, it's the controls. Not keyboard versus controller, but rather how the game reacts to your input and the feedback it gives you. I've heard people in the World of Warcraft community talk about how slick the combat is, how no other MMORPG does it better. I never really understood this. In my limited experience with WoW, I always had issues with the visual feedback disjointing from what should be going on. For example, when I played a rogue, I noticed that I could be close enough to attack an enemy while being so far away from them that my daggers never visually made contact. I'd slash the daggers in midair, and a few feet away, the mob would take damage, which always made me feel weird. To me, this felt like an issue with the game's controls. Despite my issues, WoW's players applaud the game's controls. Maybe it's more of a timing thing, where the time between you pressing a button and getting the visual feedback on a health bar is smooth. It sounds like an appreciation that could be gained over time. Could League of Legends have a similar effect? Immediately, Ashe comes to mind. She's this ice archer in League of Legends, and she fires her bow, right? To explore what feels good about League's controls, let's fire off on a tangent. Control complexity and timing, using Ashe as an example. When League champions like Ashe attack, they play an animation that locks them in place. Essentially, they must stand still to attack. If they move, their attack gets cancelled. However, there's a mechanic called kiting, or orb walking, where players try to move as much as they can between attacks. To do this, they wait for the perfect moment during an attack animation to issue a movement command. For Ashe, this means waiting until the exact frame where an arrow leaves her bow, then cancelling the rest of her attack animation without cancelling the attack by issuing a movement command at that precise time. This is a very unintuitive function of League's controls, varying with each champion and easy to mess up. In other words, it's a janky control. But when Ashe came to mind, I didn't think jank. I thought perfection. There's like this thwang sound that happens when an arrow leaves Ashe's bow, and a satisfying shwick that happens when it hits its target. When I think about the feeling of League's controls, I think about orb walking with Ashe, and how satisfying orb walking correctly feels, and how perfectly the sound of the arrow leaving the bow lines up with the right time to cancel your animation. Not to mention the sound of the arrow impaling your foe perfectly correlates with the visual of their health bar going down. Great controls, great sound design, great visual matching. But it wasn't always this way. Back when I first started playing League, I loved playing this character named Varus, also an archer, except back then, I didn't know what orb walking was, and the combat confused me. So, I would only build items that increased my attack speed, and stand still while I shot enemies as fast as possible. And every time a targeted enemy walked out of my range, the game would automatically move my character after them, cancelling my attacks. Even when I manually moved around, I was usually cancelling an attack, and this felt terrible. Although League's combat feels great to me now, this is a sense of perfection that I built up in my head over time. Maybe it's part of the reason I keep coming back, but it can't be the thing that makes League feel good. So if I didn't like the combat back then, why did I play the game at all? At first, I think it was the fantasy vibe. In 2014, players were still called summoners, hence the name of League's main map, Summoner's Rift. The idea was that we players would summon champions from around the world of Runeterra to fight each other and settle political disputes, or something like that. And it felt cool to be a summoner. As a kid, I felt involved in this fantasy world. I also played characters for their aesthetic or vibe rather than their gameplay. Varus was purple and edgy. I also played Morgana, another champion who was purple and edgy. While I still enjoy certain aesthetics, the vibes of League don't do it for me anymore. I was so disappointed when Riot redid the visuals of Summoner's Rift to look more modern and stylized, rather than old school and fantasy and gritty. In hindsight, the new version is far better, but the vibes changed completely. They also leaned away from referring to players as summoners, retconning all of the lore. The newer lore is also better, but the vibes of the game are constantly changing, leaving no consistent feel-good vibe to latch onto. One of the areas where Riot Games stopped using the concept of summoners as often was in their trailers and esports hype videos, which brings me to two other areas of League that keep players coming back: all of the media that Riot outputs and the competitive scene of the game. While these areas aren't necessarily the game itself, they have heavily influenced my feelings about the game. Let's start with how Riot hypes its competitive scene. Usually, this comes in the form of music videos they make, portraying the pro players as champions rising to a challenge, fighting to be the best of the best. And these videos are so hype. When I sucked at the game, they were the first things that made me feel competitive. Back when they called players summoners, it really meshed the fantasy immersion into League's world with an incentive to be competitive. But even after they dropped that name, these hype videos made the idea of going pro in a game feel like a dream goal. There were a few years where I tried climbing the ranks. As a Dirty Cat Arena main, I got up to Diamond promos before throwing in the towel. But even after I stopped playing competitively, I'd watch the World Championship games and the anthems that came with them, and be filled with the desire to get good at League of Legends. Sometimes this desire would be strong enough to drag me back into League, and I'd focus on ranked for months. Now though, I'm at a point where I can just enjoy the videos without being dragged back into play. Plus, plenty of people watch League esports without actually playing the game, so maybe the competition isn't the feel-good factor we're looking for. Riot also outputs tons of media that's not focused on esports. For a while, there was even a meme that Riot was a music production company disguised as a game dev studio. They've had lots of music videos unrelated to esports, covering genres from techno to metal to K-pop, and a lot of this music is genuinely good. But of course, there's also Riot's crowning achievement, the award-winning animated series, Arcane. Genuinely one of the best animated shows of all time, and it uses the League of Legends IP. I love this show way more than the game. I could and likely will write multiple essays just glazing it. But despite it being my favorite media that Riot's produced, it didn't make me want to play the game at all. And yet, unrelated to Arcane, I continue hopping back into the game, so there's gotta be something else. At this point, we're running low on feel-good factors, so let's go through a few in quick succession. First, there's the variety in the updates. While change can be frustrating, it can also be exciting, and pretty often I fire up League of Legends to check out the newest champion or the latest game mode. I almost always come back to the game at the start of each new season, when larger changes to the mechanics of the base game are made, but these are fleeting motivators. New game modes get old quickly, for example the overpowered metas that form in the arena game mode, or the spammy luck-based nature of all random ultra rapid fire. And while new champions feel novel to play at first, I tend to figure out how to play them fairly well in just a few games. I can't count how many times I've been excited for a new champ, ready to make them my whole identity, only to get bored of their gameplay within a week. There's also the dreaded League community. While the stereotypes of extreme toxicity are undeniable, there are wonderful sides to the community as well. Over the years, I've made many good friends in League, who've stuck with me even when we're not gaming together. And as I mentioned before, when I'm lonely and my friends are unavailable, I'll often find groups in the r/League Discord to game with. There are some colorful figures in that community, but more often than not, it's enjoyable to just chill with a few people and play a game that we can all connect over. But if we're talking about what makes League feel good, we have to look at the entire community the game has cultivated, which can be very hit or miss, and has likely turned away more people from the game than it's drawn in. There's one last possibility that comes to mind for why the game feels so good. Comfort. Mixed in with all of the other positives, all of the things that drag me back in, is a broken barrier to entry, worn down over my years of experience with the game. It's an easy game for me to play while chatting with people, because I've played it so much that I can turn half my brain off and rely on muscle memory alone. I can fire up a match and almost always do decently well without trying too hard. In fact, these days I find that I often do better when I'm not trying. I can learn a new character without too much trouble. I can feel like I'm good at something without trying too hard. And I think that's the biggest draw for me. There's this psychology content creator, Dr. K, who has a video about why it can be so difficult to pull yourself away from certain games. But boiled down for my purposes, League fires off all the reward centers of my brain, without needing to put in the hard work to get there. All gain, no pain. So maybe what feels good isn't the game itself. Maybe what feels good is my attachment to it. Undeniably, many things feel good in League. The controls, the sound design, the hype videos, the updates, they've pulled me back again and again and again. But what's pulled me in the most is me. When people ask me what my comfort game is, I say League, but it's not a cozy or relaxing game by nature. I'm not a reliable enough narrator to tell you what objectively makes League feel good to play, and I think that's because I'm addicted to League of Legends. Are you?